Hello and welcome to everyone across the nation joining today's workshop on how to add classes. This workshop focuses on using CASAS eTest Online together with TOPS Pro Enterprise Online for adding classes to your online database. This function is available with both basic and enhanced access. In other words, a TOPS Pro Enterprise license is not required. Administrators and teachers can be added by the TE Enhanced or ET Basic user at your agency. In other words, the data manager. Now, folks, this is one of 23 complimentary CASAS Online implementation workshops. This is a training room set up to conduct all 23 workshops. You are not expected to attend all workshops in this set or in this training room as indicated by the Citrix Online system. However, we highly recommend attending as many as possible to learn about best practices, ask questions, and to become confident in using the online system. This week wraps up this set of 23 complimentary online workshops, and we begin a repeat on Thursday morning with an implementation overview workshop. So if there are any topics listed here that you may have missed or would like to have a review, please feel free to join us. These are all complimentary. Online help documentation is available on our website under Training and Support, ET for eTest help documentation, and TE for TOPS Pro Enterprise help documentation. Please be sure to bookmark these as your electronic go-to resources, particularly the CASAS eTest Online Guide, which provides much of the information covered in these workshops, with exception of this particular workshop, folks. Here is a direct link to the guide. However, in today's workshop, we will be using the documentation from TOPS Pro Enterprise in the class, student, and personnel information section. So clicking on that provides you step-by-step directions for the class information here. We are first going to review this class definition and instance help sheet. It is because it is important, folks, to understand the structure of classes in the online database before you can move forward and add, enroll students in classes and record instructional hours for those students. So there is a document titled How to Create Classes. This is a step-by-step tutorial on the manual process for which I will actually be demonstrating. But first, let's review this class definition and instance help sheet here. To understand the class definition, essentially classes are split in two. There is a definition of a class, and then there is an instance of that class occurring in the current program year. A class definition is simply a class ID, and actually what I'll do is let me launch Enterprise, folks, as I am discussing this with you. So when you have the chance, feel free to, actually let me paste this link in the chat box here. Okay, there is a link to that, as well as let me go back over here, the How to Create Classes document, and I'm going to actually demonstrate these live. But here I just entered the two links in your chat box there. We are going to use the simulation server. Whoops, my web browser kind of locked up for just a moment. This is the main domain name of the production server compared to the simulation server, which you have access to experiment and explore without risk of compromising your live data on the production server. So we will use the simulation server. Accessing Enterprise from the simulation server is from the TOPS Pro Enterprise client or the TE icon placed in your system tray, or a TE icon on your desktop. I'm going to launch TE from my system tray, sign in as an administrator, and explain the class structure in Enterprise. From the Organization menu, Classes, Definitions. This is where we're going to start. A class definition is simply a class ID, and I'll just go ahead and enter in a sample ID, just simply using today's date. A class description, and a course code can be added, as well as an extended ID to define a time period. One purpose of the class definition is to allow the class ID to be repeated from one program year to another, solely by the class ID. TOPS Pro Enterprise handles this association with program year automatically, so an extended ID in that case is not needed for that purpose. However, you would use an extended ID for identifying terms within the program year, such as right now, let's say we're in the spring semester. You can have a fall occurrence of this class, or fall instance of this class occurring in the current program year, and we could save this record. I'll just say new class for lack of creativeness here, and save that. Sorry, I forgot, you've got to identify the site at which the class is offered. So we'll go ahead and select North Campus as an example. And I'll just say a fall class. Now let's go back here and let's open that record, which is here, and let's duplicate that record at the North Campus. And now let's call this spring, or say, oh, okay, we'll go spring. And now let's duplicate that one more time, and let's do summer. So now let's go back here and take a look at our classes. And I'm just to simplify this list. Whoops. Whoops, oh, here. Sorry, North Campus. All right, let's go back for just a moment. Let's start that again, folks. The instance of the class, or the definition of the class. So you first define the class, give the class a description, and as mentioned, if this class ID is repeated in terms within the current program year, then add the extended ID. If the class ID is not repeated in the current program year, then extended ID is not necessary. When you save this class, that brings up this split screen for the navigator to add the instance of the class. And the reason why, after I created those classes hastily for demonstration here, I realized all too quickly that the class will not automatically display unless you add the instance of that class occurring within the program year. That's the whole purpose of adding your classes, is that you define the instances of those classes occurring in the program year, and that is key. So as soon as you save a class, as you just saw me do, then select class instances to define when that class is offered within the program year. So click New from Class Instances. The site is auto-filled, as well as the definition of that class is auto-filled. Generally, the program year is auto-filled as well. Define the start and end date of the class. The default start and end dates is the entire program year. That is the default setting. It is recommended, folks, to specify the actual start and end date for those classes. So let's just demonstrate as an example. We'll say January 19th through, maybe we'll go through May 22nd, something like that, just as an example. Identify the instructional program for that class offering and any of this type of information. Now, folks, there are details about this type of information, special programs, transition focuses, and so forth in the document here on class definitions. Gives you a step-by-step tutorial on what, for example, the course code. Generally, it will appear in reports, and generally this is records the content according to your local or statewide definitions. So there's this type of information, detailed information in this step-by-step tutorial, for which we don't have time right now to go into great detail. And the same information holds true on the class instances tutorial here, such as, let's go down here, such as defining the instructional program, the special program offering, transitional focus, such as a class that has a specific purpose to prepare students for entry into post-secondary education training or an apprenticeship program. So please take a little bit of time to look through this tutorial that gives you these specifics about the class instance. So for now, though, we are going to simply save the instance of that class occurring in the program year. So at that point, notice here, this is the class definition. This is the instance of that class occurring in the current program year. From the class definitions lister, you now see that class. Even if we refresh, you still see that class at the North Campus appearing. Because it now has a direct association within the current program year. That's the manual process, folks, for adding classes to your online database. It's a two-part process. There must be a definition of the class and then an instance of that class occurring in the current program year. You would not have one without the other. There always has to be two. Now, you can assign teachers directly within the instance, or if you were part of the workshop just before this one on personnel registrations, you can associate a specific teacher to the class through the functional role. So I'll demonstrate both methods for doing this. Let's say you are doing it right at the same time you've added the class, defined the time period of that class offering, and the teacher. Click New. Select the personnel member. I'll just select Rick Williams as an example. All of this other information is auto-filled. In other words, the container is automatically identified, the definition of the class. This is a teacher. Now, it would be nice if this start and end date would be auto-filled as well, so maybe we'll try to remember in-house here to add that information and then save that record. So now you have a teacher associated with that class instance. Let's go up here to organization to show you another method for assigning a teacher, we'll say, to this class as well. So the teacher personnel registration, you have to have a registration existing first before you can assign a teacher to the class. So let's take John Smith an example. If I add a functional role for John Smith, his functional role is as a teacher, and we select the class from here. This is the new class that we just created. And again, we have to define the start and end dates. And save that record. So now John Smith has a functional role for this specific class at the North Campus. John Smith can have more functional roles at the same campus or other campuses. You can also have two teachers teaching within the same class. Now we have Rick Williams here. Let's see, John Smith. Let's see, where did John Smith go? Sorry about that. Let's go back over here. Refresh. Well, I'm not sure right offhand where John Smith went. This is defining a teacher for this specific time period for that class. Let's say that you have the definition, you created the instance. My recommendation, until I can further explain that snafu there, is that then go to the personnel registration and add the functional role for the teacher. Now, those folks are, even though it didn't go as smooth as I had planned, that is the manual process for, or the process for manually adding a teacher, or manually adding classes, instances, and the teacher to the class. So again, just as a recap, the class definition has to exist, and an instance of that class occurring in the program year must be added in order to further identify teachers for that class. The class simply exists with an ID and class description. Use extended code if necessary, if that class ID is repeated in different terms throughout that program year. And then add the instance of the implementation of that class within a program year. And then it is students that are assigned to the instance of that class via class enrollments. So going back here, classes, instances, that class that we just added as an example, then class enrollments here can be added as well as instructional hours. And we'll walk through those tomorrow. I'll demonstrate the manual process on both of these in the 2 workshops for tomorrow, as well as the automated process through importing. And that's where I want to go now, is to demonstrate how to import classes at the same time assigning teachers to classes simply through the import process. It takes care of a lot of, it takes away a lot of the manual data entries. Now, what you need to watch out for, folks, is that if you are using a third-party registration and attendance system, you should use the same, the classes should be at the same sites as identified in your registration and attendance system. The class IDs should be identical in both systems, as well as the class description and the start and the end dates. So please be sure to reference, even if there is not a direct electronic handshake between the two systems. And what I mean by that is that your registration and attendance system may not automatically offer an export file to automatically set up classes in your online database. That's okay, don't fret. As long as you can acquire that information, then use one of these fillable templates here that we have for classes. Here's class records here. We have detailed directions on how to populate this template and then turn it into an importable file. So, and this is for Rolling Hills Adult School. So you would identify your agency, the site at which these classes are offered, the class ID, class description. You can add course code here if that's appropriate. Add the teacher by the personnel ID. And then these class examples happen to be in the fall. We can also add these in additional time periods. But I'm going to use this import template as an example. So once you populate this information, now as far as sequence, all records have a sequence. It's just a numerical accounting of how many records you are attempting to import. The transaction code for classes is 4050, and you will see this in the import wizard. Your state would go here, but if you are role-playing the import process using the simulation server, then you don't need to change. Essentially, you don't even need to change anything on these templates. Just go through that experience. But as far as the sequence and the transcode, that would remain the same. If you are using this for Rolling Hills, the state code remains the same as well as the agency ID. You can change the site, class ID information, and descriptions if you want. Okay, so once this information is populated, then what the directions tell you to do is save that file, and I'm going to save this on my desktop as a comma-separated, delimited, or comma-delimited file, a CSV file. Save that. And folks, don't open the file after it is saved as a CSV. The reason being is that any IDs that have a leading 0 will be automatically dropped from that file if you open it, and so thereby that invalidates that now as an importable file. So once that file is saved and closed, don't reopen it. Let the wizard open that file. So let's go here to Tools, Third-Party Import Wizard. Next. And here I'll select class records from a third-party system. Now, if you participated in the previous workshop, we demonstrated importing teacher records to automatically create for us personnel registrations and link user accounts. So now that single import represented 2 manual processes. Importing now the class records will automatically set up and takes away the manual process of adding a class definition, adding the instance of that class occurring in the program year, and assigning teachers to classes, either ideally through the personnel registration, which is the functional role. So here we've selected class records. Click Next, browse for that file, class records, next, next again. This is called a whitelister. In other words, if there were any errors, there would be colors on here indicating any record that may have had an error. And so if you detect any errors, you can correct errors on the spot by highlighting them and using the edit window here to edit any necessary information. When you highlight a record, the error message appears down here in this field. But all these records are good. It's a whitelister, so we're good to go. Go next, next again. And let's give that a moment to, it's doing a lot simultaneously, folks. It's creating the definition and the instance, and it is assigning the teachers to those classes. Next. Let's see, import failed. I think maybe the classes might have already been in there. It failed for some reason. Maybe somebody already attempted this process and the classes already exist. Let's go next. We'll just give it another attempt here. And the import function is not granted to all users. Generally, this is a single person at your agency identified as the we're just going to go ahead and cancel this because I believe it's telling us that the records already exist. So I think somebody already beat us to it by adding those classes. Actually, you can see them here. These ESL classes, these were from the import template. Let's just, let's go here, campus. And the ones that we specifically imported were Identify for Fall. And these are the identical classes that you saw populated on that template. I can double click on a class and no, let's see here. Let's go, sorry, what I want to do is actually go to the classes definitions to show you that. We'll select the North Campus. This is where we imported them. Let me go ahead and simplify this list. And if I double click to open the definition of that class, look at the instance of that class, you see the import, through the import process, it automatically added the class. Now, the import process does not give you the opportunity, yes it does, I'm sorry, the import template does not give you the opportunity to define the start and end dates. However, I was a little bit too hasty when I was importing this, and I forgot to show you that at the point, remember when I was mentioning or showing the white lister, what I should have been reminded myself of is that if all of these classes in the fall, and I just used my shift key and highlighted all of those records, I could simultaneously specify the actual start and end dates. Let's see, maybe these occurred in September, let's say, through maybe December, let's see, it would be in the prior program year, maybe that date, and saved that. So that would have applied to all records simultaneously. Let's just go ahead and cancel this wizard here. So pause for a moment and specify the start and end dates. So that way, and I'm just going to go ahead and cancel this wizard here. That way, the actual dedicated start and end dates will populate this field. If you overlook it like I did in my demonstration, and I apologize for that, simply double click to open that record and then define the actual start and end dates of that class. Now, what I'm going to do actually is for our benefit in this demonstration, let's say, even though this is fall, well, actually here, what I'll do, let's cancel that for a moment. Let's say that this class also occurs in the spring. I'll just use this as an example. And then the instance of that class, you can either manually import this or use the import wizard, or this is another process where you are wanting to add another instance of that class occurring in the program year. I could have had that all on the template through the different time periods. There is also a class, what's called a proxy wizard, which you can proxy the classes, select the classes and proxy them to create the additional instances, or you can do it manually like I'm doing here. And so this, I would say, define the instance of this class occurring, say, in the spring, as an example. And refresh that. Oh, I think I edited that one. Oh, no, it's the spring one. Sorry about that. And so then that's the instance there. Now, as far as the teachers, let's go back here. Not sure that this view is working appropriately, but I can tell you from here, the registration for John Smith and Mary Smith, if I double click on John Smith and look at his functional roles, he's assigned to that class there. That was the new class. I believe it's because folks, and I apologize for this, that the personnel registration for these individuals, I actually edited the user account and should have kept it the same because the import file actually used this field pulls from the username. And so had I have not edited previously these user accounts and kept them the same, my examples would have gone very smoothly and the functional role would automatically be assigned. Let's see, let's go ahead and just do this here. I go like that. The teacher, I would say, if you are setting up classes and teachers, I would say just go ahead and use these import templates as is. So I'm re-importing those teachers. Maybe that won't work here. Okay. Let's disconnect here and then sign in as J. Smith. I don't think I gave him a password. There we go. And John Smith can access his class. Oh, let's see. I can't remember now which one I assigned him to. When the teachers are given access to their class, then they'll be able to add instructional hours and class enrollments. And if I take it a step further, and folks, the class reports can be generated to include the teachers' names on those reports by selecting the class instance. I don't know if this will, I'm not going to use my one example there only because I know that I've bypassed some of the information here. Again, my apologies, folks. But I think the important thing to know is how, here again, the class structure. And this is what I was attempting to demonstrate, folks, is that when the personnel registration exists, and then you add the class, and the personnel registration links with a user account so the teacher can sign in to Enterprise, access their class, generate reports just like this. Their name will appear on the report for their class, and teachers generally like that. Any questions, folks, about the manual process for adding classes as well as the importing process for adding those classes The documentation that you will want to reference is here in the TOPS Pro Enterprise Help Documentation class information. Understand this first to help you identify the best way to structure your classes in your online database. And ideally, you want that to be identical to what you have in your registration and attendance system, such as the IDs and the class names at the appropriate site locations. So mimic that in your online database, and then go about the task of following this document on how to create classes, or we can provide you with the import template to automatically set up your classes. Any questions, folks? Alrighty. If you think of anything afterwards, don't hesitate to contact us, and I'd be more than happy to provide these import templates to you. And go ahead and experiment and explore on the simulation server, following this order for importing. Such as teachers, classes, and then students. So follow what is on this import wizard, teachers, and then turn around and import those classes. Add students. You can add test records to associate with the students. Enroll the students in classes through this file here. You can also add instructional hours for students enrolled in these classes. And then you can look at the data that you've generated through these import processes. All right, folks, with that, we're going to end today's workshop. Thank you so much for your time, and don't hesitate to keep in touch.